Hello and good evening, everyone. To Bill and all of the Consistent Life staff, thank you so much for having me tonight. To everyone in the crowd wondering, what is that youngster doing on the stage? Here's a short answer. My name is Amy Bedoy, and I am 23 years old. So I'm pretty young in the grand scheme of things. And we're not at a student conference, so this perhaps seems a bit strange that I'm speaking to this crowd of people who are by and large older than I. But I'm here to talk to you about what we as a movement can do to engage the youth and young adult population, and how to get them involved in the Consistent Life movement. Briefly, I'm going to explain to you why I am Consistent Life, and why it is that I do what I do. During the course of my education, I became well-versed in ethical theory, politics, and science. It became apparent to me that human dignity was of the utmost value. Regardless of what faith I held or what politics I subscribed to, as both changed during my formative years, it was clear to me that the value of human life was inestimable and utterly priceless. Unlike many of my peers seeking to find their own ethical niche in Kant, Rousseau, or Aristotle, this was not an ethic laid in utilitarianism or some sort of other deontological framework. This was, in essence, an ethic which held the highest value as human life and human dignity. It was never a question to me. Unlike utilitarianism, I did not find happiness to be the highest good. And unlike a more convoluted or conversely a too simplified theory, I did not find liberty to be the highest good. If I could not put it into the words of faith, life was the highest good that I could estimate, or at least the thing worth most protecting. To me, this encompasses abortion, unjust war, unjust use of the death penalty, torture, abuse, human trafficking, embryonic stem cell research, and in truth, any form of aggressive violence towards other human beings. It isn't a pick and choose whose life is valuable system of belief, but one grounded in the philosophical idea that humanity is indeed a species worth preserving on every level. So I got involved in pro-life work first while I was in high school, because it was the most organized of any of the issues, but also because it is probably the most prescient. But I soon sought out a way to work on all issues of life and human dignity. I was the president of the Life Matters Club while at Carnegie Mellon University, the Life Matters Club being a consistent life group that evolved from the pro-life group on campus. But after graduation this past May, I decided that my time working for life was not over. In fact, my dedication only grew, knowing that now out of college, it would be more of an effort to truly work within the movement. And finding no active youth movement for the consistent life ethic, I decided that something had to be done. So I started the Life Matters Journal, which is, I suppose, how I got the invitation to stand here and speak with you today. We are all aware of the problems that we face in the arena of youth engagement. The stereotypes of age, the divisiveness of modern politics and religion, and the seeming apathy of young people towards issues of life and death. But hopefully, I will present you all with some solutions to these problems in the next half hour or so. And as you might find, some of the solutions are inherent to the movement. You would be surprised to know that from what I have gleaned from my own personal experience, Consistent Life cause faces fewer problems than single-issue groups. We simply need to learn how to improve upon youth involvement. We all understand the importance of youth involvement in any movement. Quite simply, if you do not want the movement to die, you must reinvigorate on a constant basis. New lifeblood must be pumped in continually to perpetuate the cause. And yet, I remember when I first heard of Consistent Life. Back then, I believe it was known as Seamless Garment. The first thing that I thought of was older hippies and a middle-aged constituency. And while I simultaneously found it wonderful that Students for Life of America was thriving so greatly, I was equally distraught that consistent life did not seem to have a vibrant youth presence. Our work to spread the consistent life message might perhaps be crippled by this stereotype of age, which is why I'm here to talk to you about engaging youth and young adults in the cause. The idea of protecting all human life isn't one that should just be relegated to the hippies and peaceniks of ages past, or just the Catholics, or just the Quakers, or just the Democrats, or just the Republicans. It is one that should be attractive to any person, regardless of age, faith, or political persuasion. On our campuses, Amnesty International thrives. Anti-human trafficking groups have great turnouts, and the community service organizations do exceedingly well. But Amnesty is missing a few links to the peace and life puzzle. Human trafficking is just one issue, and community service does not often address the theoretical ideas and more controversial issues of life and death. Loving human rights is very cool, being for peace is so chic, and giving back to the community is lauded. And our youth get that, in bits and pieces it seems. Now we just have to move to engage our youth in the ideas of the whole of human dignity, instead of merely single issues. So we must attract youth. We must engage them in conversation, appeal to their growing minds on the value of all human life, not just some. I think we can all understand the party line voters, how they think and react to concepts of violence based on their view through a one-sided lens. And if there's one thing I have grasped after being on a very vehemently secular and liberal university campus for 4 years, it is that if we were merely anti-abortion, many on the liberal left would shout us down as pig-headed or chauvinistic, claiming that we were religious extremists and unfeeling. This was a problem that we had to overcome. If people would not engage with us, there was no chance to win hearts and minds. But after we changed our written constitution and our name to truly reflect our consistent life stance, when a student would take the time to come and sit down with us, they would begin to understand our view. That human life is the ultimate thing of value, worthy of protection. Regardless of what belief system we adhered to, justice required that we not inflict aggressive offensive harm. They were shocked that we were consistent, but it made them more willing to discourse with us and listen to what we had to say, even if they disagreed on particulars. Being pro-life is wonderful and such a great good in our time, when there have been at least 53 million legal abortions in our country since 1973. But being anti-abortion alone has left a great political divide on our campuses. Students can merely say that you only value the child's life, that you aren't for all human life, and so on and so forth. But to change the dialogue from the anti-abortion stance of simply preborn life is valuable to a stance that says all life is valuable. Yes, the preborn, but even the inmate on death row, even the civilian who is being bombed because they live in enemy territory, even the elderly and even the weak. It changes the discourse completely. It changes from passersby brushing off a group as religiously motivated or politically swayed to one of true interest and compassion on a consistent basis. I truly believe that the consistent life ethic is more attractive to my generation than following party line politics. And though our pro-life club was doing all right in just fighting abortion, we would consistently get large crowds when we touched on other issues, say human trafficking or injustice and aggression in North Korea. So we decided to formally change our name and deliberately expand the reach of the subjects we would address. It is amazing how now, when we approach the issue of abortion, people can no longer claim that we are selectively pro-life. Students are coming out of the woodwork to support the work related to one, maybe two issues. Yet we hope that in our work, in connecting all issues together under the umbrella of unjust violence, that we teach people the value of all human life, and engage each member in personal conversation on why life matters, no matter what. I believe that making the pro-life movement more accessible correlates directly to the level of consistency and the ethic of its members. In prior years, our pro-life work was hampered by our association as a right-wing group and a single-issue organization. And now, so many doors have been opened to us based on the fact that young people understand and value logical consistency. Our well-educated young people are grasping the value of human life in at least one instance, whether that be unjust war, abortion, or any of the life and dignity issues. And perhaps they begin to question why we would not value human life in all other instances. Therefore, I would heartily recommend that pro-life student groups reevaluate their stance, and perhaps open the doors of their club to the whole variety of consistent life issues. However that variety is put into action, you will attract people who may not have been interested before, and you will have the opportunity to change hearts and minds of students who are willing to listen for logical consistency of what you have to say. Moving forward, in order to make the most of the resources that we have, I fully believe that we should tap into the network that Students for Life of America has already laid. These groups understand the basic value of human life, and often will comprehend the message of the consistent life ethic. The problem that even we faced was the question of, will expanding our platform stretch us too thin? And my answer to all pro-life groups is no. If you expand your platform, you will also likely expand your constituency, your campus presence, and your dialogue with students. Whether that means having one group that does it all, or subgroups under one masthead group, it also means truly standing for justice in all human life. While I would venture to say that abortion is indeed the most pressing issue, with the most annual casualties and the most controversy surrounding it, to neglect the other cases of unjust violence in our world is to seem to be selective about who indeed you stand for. For if one day you stand to save a preborn child's life, then a decade later do not stand up and fight for their life in an abusive home, or 2 decades later do not fight for their right to life when they are on death row, or headed to battle in an unjust war, you do indeed seem to stand for only the instance of preborn life. My generation is not hostile to a message of peace and compassion. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that my generation, having been brought up in a culture that devalues life in so many cases, is more open to the cross-political, multi-issue stance of the consistent life ethic than generations prior. We are more willing to get together and reach out across the lines drawn in the culture war, to discourse, cooperate, and bring about peace. And so, in order to educate on what is truly violence, consistency is the best thing for a logically minded youth demographic. We must work to change the rhetoric used in the pro-life and pro-peace movements, and use the foundations in place to build up a culture that is truly for all life. Now, I'm going to move on a bit to talk about how our movement must reach youth. As I'm sure you know, one of the most important aspects of engaging young people is knowing how to reach them on their own level, in order to bring the discourse and their thought process to a higher level. Meeting a person on his or her level is the most basic rule of human interaction. To speak Cantonese to a person who only speaks Portuguese would make the attempt irrelevant and futile. I would even venture to say that when we speak to our youth, we must start our conversations on a level to which they can relate. So perhaps, instead of blunt theory, we begin with examples. This is not to say that we talk about video games only for the sake of talking about video games, though that could be fun too, but that we start a conversation about, say, certain first-person shooter video games to discuss the idea of just war or something of the like.